Hello, 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 and welcome to the cornfield. I am Jamie Beeman, and my goodness, I am so sorry. It's been a few weeks since you've heard from me, and there are multiple reasons for that. I hope that you were able to catch my conversation with Xander Keg, which I think was such an important, honest, clinical conversation, if nothing else, about trans kids and how we can help them. Anyway, I'm sorry. I was opening as Fagin and Oliver out in Sharon, Connecticut, and then the whole thing had to close because everybody got COVID. COVID wins again. So I've been recovering from COVID, and why not do one of my favorite things and talk with brilliant young people over Zoom style platforms while in quarantine. It's just taken me back to 2020, and today I'm really excited because actually they got to see me play Fagin in Oliver before it was no more, and I was so thrilled to meet these two people in person. And all I'm going to say, and I'm going to let them say the rest, is Gabriel and I met online, having a chat through an organization that we were involved with, and she lit up like a light bulb, like an electric light bulb, because she was talking with somebody of like mind, of another generation, from the same industry, from the same creative path, who was telling the truth. And I had a similar experience to this when I met her lovely fiance, Kramer, who is also with us today. And this is really fun, actually, to talk to you both. And they will testify, after the performance of Oliver, we all like chit-chatted, had some wine, closed the bar, not difficult to do in Sharon, Connecticut, and ended up like talking in the parking lot for 2 hours and didn't want to let each other go because of some honesty, truth-telling, all good-natured, well-intentioned, well-grounded, like-minded discourse of a high order. So I had to have them here with me on the Cornfield podcast. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but be sure to subscribe, you guys. I always forget to say these things because who am I? But please do like and subscribe and share, and follow me on Substack, jamesbeeman.substack.com, for my latest essay at the cornfield. And let my friends introduce themselves. First of all, Gabriel, my darling, introduce yourself, and then you can pass it on over.
We both studied at the same musical theater program, and our training was a conservatory style program. And we also studied abroad together in London. And throughout all of this training we found that we both had an interest in the same sort of classes. We both enjoyed our physical theater, our Lecoq training. We both enjoyed the fight choreo stuff that we learned, and language and dialect training. And so as collaborators, first we started, our first show together was the Laramie Project. So romantic.
Wow.
And then
a little toe tapping musical.
Our second show was Urinetown. And then our third show was City of Angels. Our fourth show, gosh, I'm going to go through them all. Okay. We did Three Penny.
Adam's Family.
Adam's Family. We've done other
this was all at school.
Acts. Yeah, all at school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, we've been in other stuff that we've just been there to help support the other one with. But we've worked both as actors together, as director and actor for both of us, or, helping out with like stagehand stuff, whether it's a stage management position or something like that. So we've both been able to collaborate in a wide variety of different like positions in this field. But that, I think, has been something we've had to sort of figure out along the way and sort of balance. And for a while there, I remember back in 2018, 2019, you were getting a lot of attention and a lot of work. And that was really, really fun to watch and help support. But I remember that being a little difficult too, because I was like, I'm not picking up anything right now. And being that part, and especially in this industry, it's not like we're competing because we're not the same type, obviously. But that
Who knows, though? I mean,
had to grow and learn how to balance that and take our wins and celebrate every win for the other person. What do you
Yeah,
think?
so we graduated in 2019, and I feel like in some ways, especially with the COVID thing, we did dodge a bullet because we got our showcase in. We got some. I mean, not a lot of agents came to see our showcase, but that wasn't a problem with COVID. That was a logistical issue that came up. There was another bigger school that was having their thing at the same time, so that's neither here nor there.
Oh boy, yeah.
It was less like the door closed because of COVID before we got our foot in. It was more like we got our foot in because we graduated. We had like a whole 3 or 4 months before things started really kicking off with the shutdowns. So we get our foot in, and then we finally open the door, and then the building is gone.
Yeah.
More like. So I had just finished. I was in Fame, and then I was in a new play, just a straight play. And then after that, COVID hit. I was pretty much right after we graduated, and because of COVID, that's why I decided that, you know what, okay, I'm done. I'm going to go try to do my own thing somewhere separately. I was already having issues with the acting industry, especially in DC, because it's so politically charged there. And then COVID was kind of the last straw for me. Yeah. I decided to go the YouTube route, and then via us talking, I feel like maybe I had some influence in your decision to maybe I'll do voice acting. It's not the same thing as YouTube, but they're both sort of online self-sustaining businesses, so that we're not having to bank on the right people doing the casting, those people not being super edgy and political, or just wanting us in general. That way we can provide for ourselves. This is my thinking. I wanted to be able to provide for myself without having to work part-time at a hardware store in a city that I didn't like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. And you know, what's interesting is you're not the only young creative folks who took advantage of that lockdown time and really started harnessing the things that you were able to do online and really building something from that. My niece got her master's degree from Berklee School of Music in, I guess it was music business or business, whatever it is, online. She taught herself to play piano. She got into a collaboration with a producer out there, a content creator, and they're flying. They're flying. So all of that entrepreneurship. I mean, I think God knows this is my feeble effort to participate, but I do love this format. I love writing my essays. Being a writer, and you both are writers, so writing is one of those disciplines. A writer will do anything to keep from writing, especially when it's just there at the tip of your brain, and is when you start cleaning. Fran Lebowitz, who I love. Fran Lebowitz is such the ultimate curmudgeon of our time, and she's like, writers' homes are the neatest, cleanest homes of anyone, because you'll do anything to keep from writing. But I love the discipline of it, and I love being able to say exactly what I mean. I don't do well with being told to shut up. And I'm not sure how good I am at this, because I have verbal diarrhea, and I never know when to shut up and hand off the mic. That's been my path, my cross to bear. But I think it's good that you're starting out the way you are, because what you're doing is, and this is just me giving an old gay theater person's opinion, but I think we share a lot in common, because the kind of coming up in theater, the grassrootsy nature of it, and learning all the different disciplines of being interested in the backstage and the onstage and the thing, I grew up in that. So I feel this enormous connection with your own journey, because theater is this holistic thing. It's a community of like-minded sort of comrades, coming together to do something. There's very little of that kind of collaboration or company spirit happening, I find, in the industry. When it does happen, it's like, it's all about leadership. And the theater I just worked at, I'm happy to trumpet the Sharon Playhouse in Sharon, Connecticut, under the artistic directorship of Carl Andrus, and my director, Michael Kevin Baldwin, who is the education department there, and has this thriving community of young kids. They were great. They were terrific, and they take it seriously, and they're looking to people like me the way I hope kids will at this time in my life. And kids includes you also, because I never shut my mouth. But my fights and feuds that I've had in the 30 plus years that I've been doing this were with directors or producers or choreographers over matters, creative differences and or personality clashes.
Yeah.
But this other stuff, no. And in fact, it really, so I wonder. I mean, I know it's hard to be part of a creative couple. My ex was a ballet dancer when we were together, and he toured all over the world with Ballet Trocadero de Monte Carlo for 7 years. And we spent a lot of time apart at a time when we didn't have email or video chat. Back when we wrote love letters to each other, transatlantically or trans-Pacifically or whatever it was. So I know how hard that can be, but it can also bind you closer together, because it's hard to find somebody outside, muggles, as we say, or my mother used to say civilians, people outside of the business, to understand the weird life that you're choosing to do. So talk to me about, so you did all of that stuff. You got a showcase and you graduated, and then no momentum, no whatever. Talk to me about access. This is something I find that I want to talk to younger artists in theater who are coming up, because the times are so different, and the priorities of casting people and the access to people in the room, especially for theater, which makes no sense at all. It's so much harder for you guys to get in front of people. What are you doing about that? I mean, I know you're doing your own stuff, but you're a voice actor, you're a voice artist. I'm sure you've got a reel. I'm sure you've got, that channel going, and a SoundCloud and whatever you whippersnappers have. How are you getting your stuff listened to? How are you getting access to auditions?
For me, most of my auditions that I send in for, because I haven't sent anything, I've never done a video audition, because I was like, I refuse to do that. I will only do in-person auditions. Unless it's for film, unless it's for something that is film, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. Because I always feel like my voice on camera never picks up as well as it does when I'm in the booth, or like, I look one dimensional, I don't like that. And I think that there is a different attitude you bring to a space, and having that human connection with somebody, I really, really value. So I have not done any virtual auditions, and the only virtual things that I have done are voice specific work. So that's where I'm just trying to get in as many auditions as I can. I'm on several different websites. And then I'm also trying to build up my own sort of business so that I can have direct client access and start directly talking to people and growing that network. So that's where a lot of the voiceover stuff sort of takes over. And then that's voiceover acting. That's where I'm at. I just auditioned for shows that I'm interested in now in the theaters that are near me, or that I know I am going to at least trust that things will run smoothly. That sounds kind of vague, but directing feels.
No, I like that. I like a little cockeyed optimism.
Yeah, auditioning.
So weird. So my question for you, though, is it's not a criticism in any way, but I have many feelings about self-tape auditions, especially for theater, especially for first round. I don't sing in my bedroom with a track on a Bluetooth speaker the way I'm going to sing in the room with an accompanist in person for a live project. So I get that, but I also get that this is what they're doing. So, you know, if you dig your heels in on that one,
I almost feel like
how do you participate, or do you care? Or
I feel like auditions, and this is one of the things we sort of learned when we were at school, was you always want to make a positive impression. So you shouldn't go in with your sad song or your sad ballad. You should go in with the funny thing that's going to make people laugh and remember you and be like, oh my gosh, yeah, she did this funny thing in the room and it's great. And you're like, yeah, I'm not going to try to make people cry. They're not going to cry. They're just going to be like, okay, she has a good cry voice. I don't know. And when you're filming somebody do that, it's like, even when it's the comedic stuff, it's like, do I need a laugh track here? So you know that this is supposed to be comedic? Because sometimes you could fall on that and be like, wow, this is just tragic. Even though it's like, you know, in the room, you could very clearly be like, oh, this line is comedic, like, you know, but I don't know. So sad music under it completely changes the scene, you know?
Yeah. I feel like what we're being robbed of is the thing that has always been a winning thing for me in this industry, because I've worked a lot in this industry. And it's the interpersonal, in the room, breathing, living human beings, cracking each other up, being able to fill the room with your presence. Mm-hmm. It's not even about what you do. In terms of your reading or your singing or it's always been about that, and all of that's been taken away. And you also, there's part of me, and I understand what you're saying about, and you know, there's going to be laymen listening to this conversation and being like, well, self-tape auditions, and guys, it's really like this. Find someone to read with you, act a scene with your iPhone on a tripod, and hope it reads across from here up in landscape mode. But you never know if they've seen it or not. You never know if they've watched your stuff or not. My agents probably watch my auditions more than casting people do. And you never get feedback. So, I mean, you're continually being further and further and further and further removed from the efficacy of your work to get work. And so I guess that was the bad news I was trying to elicit from you. I understand your frustration. I really, really do. I do think it's starting to change, and I have been doing more in-person stuff. And you know, but you also have to want to do the work that's being done. Right? So talk to me, Kramer. Kramer, I find you to be a unicorn. I find you to be a unicorn, and I've only met you the one time, but I have followed all of the links and watched the videos of you robbing the rich and giving to the poor in your Robin Hood-ness, which I'm just fascinated. So this is the content that you are creating, and I'm curious, what's your audience? Who loves this kind of historical sort of stepping back in time, recreation of the way things? I love it. I always loved the idea of time travel. Growing up as a kid, I've always been into that whole imaginative thing. So, how did you get into that? And what is that community like for an actor?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've always liked medieval stuff. I've always liked fantasy stuff. So that started much further back in my developmental years. When I decided to start a YouTube channel specifically, I was tossing around a couple different ideas, and I eventually settled on that because it was what I was doing in my free time to make me not hate living in the city. Gabe will attest that pretty much through the second half of our graduating year until I left the city, like I would just constantly be writing in my notebook about like how much I wanted to be on some grand adventure, literally anywhere else. So I found a way to do that, and then I was like, I might as well film already doing it. And the community, I'm not really sure. I haven't really thought about it like from an acting perspective as much. But the community is made up of a lot of different people. There's people that just enjoy it for the sake of its entertainment. There's people that are like history buffs that want to know how to compare their like fantasy D&D game to what actually happened in our reality, and they're watching for that reason. There are like gamers. And the most consistent comment that I get is that people are watching my content simply because they like me, like as a person. And so they're essentially tuning in to just like spend time with me more than anything else. And I have a slightly different take on the auditioning stuff, because I personally don't really mind doing the camera, doing a taped audition, but perhaps that's because at this point I've done 3 years of taping myself all the time. But for me, each video I put out is a form of audition almost, because it's sort of a guess as to whether or not people are going to enjoy it and connect with it. So I traded one industry where I dreaded auditioning, every season or so to having to audition.
That's a line. I don't know if you guys know. I mean, if you don't, I forgive you, but I will bequeath it to you because it's a rite of passage. If you know the movie All About Eve, do you know All About Eve?
I don't.
All About Eve. Next date night. Get a takeaway, the two of you, curl up. All About Eve. It is the ultimate theater movie about backstage, backstabbing, understudy, trying to take over the star's life, and brilliant screenplay, probably the best dialogue ever written for the screen by Joe Mankiewicz, and it stars Bette Davis and Ann Baxter, it's a classic, and you'll appreciate it because it's all the dirty about being in the theater. It's all the dirty, said brilliantly, and Marilyn Monroe has her first speaking role in this movie. It's 1950. Wow. And she plays Miss Caswell, who is a Corrine who's trying to go legit and trying to weasel her way up the ladder and to be cast in the play that Bette Davis is starring in on Broadway. But she's Marilyn Monroe. Right. Mm-hmm. And so she goes to audition, and she's violently ill to her tummy and gets, a nervous thing and can't possibly do her audition. And she comes out and she turns to Addison DeWitt, who is this, raconteur, theater gossip columnist and power broker, manipulator, Machiavellian type. And she says, what's next? And he says, I think you should head towards television. And she's like, tell me this, are there auditions for television? And he says, that's all television is, my dear, nothing but auditions. So that is the long story to go with what you just said, Kramer, about 15 minutes ago. Before I digressed. Yeah, of course. Here you are in your, you get to control the content. You're in front of the camera and you get to craft that. And it's funny because when I started in New York, I came here in 93. So it's been 30 years this summer that I've been in New York. And I came here with a cabaret act that I had created playing Lauren Bacall, another, golden age of Hollywood icon. In drag at 27 years old, completely expecting to destroy my career. And cabaret, it still is, because I'm starting to publicize my cabaret comeback. And oh, God, help me. But it's one of the ways that you can get on stage in New York. You can get on stage, you call the shots, you wrote the show, you crafted the show, you get to do it exactly the way that you want to do it within your limited means. And there's an audience for it built in. And over time, you can build that up. It's kind of like comedy clubs and stuff, but that I don't think the people I call the pick a little, woke a little ladies have not come into the cabaret and nightclub world yet to fuck around with it. But comedy clubs, yes, but it's all storytelling, is it not? Yeah. So, okay. So you're getting married. You're very young. Where does this come from? Did you grow up on a commune? No, I'm teasing. My mother was pregnant with my brother at 21. So maybe, I don't know, do you feel like you're throwbacks? Because you're young folk.
We say this pretty much anytime somebody talks about COVID or we talk with our college friends, that we're like, we still feel like we're 23 because these last 3 years have zipped by.
Just disappeared.
So I still feel, like I'm 23. No, we'll be 27 next year.
Yeah.
And and some days when I turned 26, I thought, I feel like I'm actually turning 28, and I don't know where that came out of. I don't know what 28 feels like, but I was like, oh yeah, I'm 28 now. And I'm like, you're not 28, you're 26. Shut up. What are you doing? But time.
What is 28? I don't know.
Just time feels like so inconsistent. It's like we've been in limbo, and in a way, getting married is like the one thing that we can do where we're like, this is what we want to do. This is our life. We're going to take ownership of this, and we're going to go forward and move forward and take out the limbo and do something that we actually want to do. And that feels.
I feel like you've pathologized our choice to get married. I'm going to take that.
But isn't that what we do now? Isn't that what we do now? Isn't that our narrative now? You know, this is why I am broken and I must put myself back together.
So what I'll say, I mean, we've been together going on 5 years.
5 years? Wait, we're gonna be 7 by the end of this year.
See, I don't remember how old I am. I don't remember how long.
7 years together.
We've been together for a while. We met in college, obviously.
You sound like a married couple already.
But I don't really feel like we're that young when it comes to getting married. I feel like society expects people to get married later and later in life now, as you know, our lifespans have gotten longer and people are tending to want to infantilize themselves and by proxy others more and more and more. I don't think, and I'm not saying that you're doing that either. But what I am saying is that I feel like we're at a pretty normal place to get married, and I feel like people in the past got married even younger than we did. And honestly, you know, if there's people like our parents or something like, oh, you're still so young, I'm like, can you not?
Yeah.
You know, that was a leading question because the truth is, I was in a long-term relationship for 16 years, pre-marriage equality. We were a showmance in a summer stock theater and moved in 3 weeks after we met and stayed together probably longer than we should have, but quite a long time in gay years, especially. And I was 23. I needed to have structure. I was coming out of, you know, really the shell shock of going to college during the AIDS epidemic, like at its worst, and becoming totally sexually repressed. I mean, completely no. And when I found somebody that I could love, I was like, you, please, don't let me be alone, you know. And we lived together well, which I think is probably the hardest thing to do. The cohabitation thing. I don't think I could do it again. I've been alone even longer than I was with my ex at this point, and I'm too set in my ways. But I understand in these times the impulse for two people who really love each other to build their own path together. Mm-hmm. I think it's the only way to remain autonomous of thought and intent and vision, because this too shall pass. Because what I also hear, not that I'm so discerning or whatever, but what I hear within the spaces when you talk, Gabe, is that this too shall pass, that there will be a clearing of a great many current obstacles and barriers to progress for you. And you're right, it's already happening. It's already happening, and they don't like it. The keepers of the whatever, the non-problematic.
They don't like to have a torch sort of being passed along, or the fact that the industry has completely changed and now young people like us can do what we want to do every day and make our own way. I do see that, and I don't feel beholden to them. I just don't. To them.
No.
Them. No, I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, the sooner you can shed that illusion of the business being this grand poobah, the great and powerful Wizard of Oz behind a curtain, it's not that organized.
Yeah.
Well, especially
the way it really is organized, and I think everybody knows that, is through nepotism and close friendships, relationships over years.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Sorry.
Being on the other side of the table for that sort of situation, having directed and started as many new projects as I feel like I have and that you have, we've gotten used to sort of seeing, okay, yeah, this is just how it goes. We know how the butter is made. Or is that what it is? The butter? What is it?
Sausage.
The sausage. Wow. we know how it's
the sausage is made.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't ever like to try uses for myself as to why, this is why I'm not in the industry anymore. It's because of this thing that people do. Because of this thing. It's I just chose a different path because I enjoy what I'm doing now, and I wasn't fully enjoying what I was doing before. And I wasn't expecting the industry or the people in it to change around me. I just went, okay, I'm going to do my own thing because that's what I want to do. And if I wanted to go back on audition,
I think that's what you have to do. That's what you have to do anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you're doing it now. I mean, I was like you. When I was your age, I moved here to New York City dressed as a middle-aged, fading Hollywood star in drag, playing for 3 people on Monday nights at 9 at Don't Tell Mama, and persisting and finding a way to make your own sausage. And I think you have to do that regardless of what kind of aperture you find your way being able to get into the business through. All I will say is this: the higher up the food chain you go, the more jealous everybody is of their patch of land. They're territorial. They are afraid of being unseated. There's not enough to go around. As you know, I mean, I've been a member of Actors Equity since 1990. There are 51,000 members on the books, and 3,500 of them are working in any given work week nationally.
Mm-hmm.
Then no one's making a living in the theater. And on the Broadway, I mean, that's like any elite strata, stratum, or whatever the word is, in American commercial industry. And it's a closed shop. For most of us, I'll occasionally be thrown a bone, because of my credits and because I'm sort of hitting a sweet spot in terms of, I call it old and still ambulatory. I'm still able to walk and remember a line. So I'm starting to be relevant again, and I've been finding, and I'm curious about where your intersectionality comes in. I'm curious about that. But lately, I'm finding I am being called in to audition for projects specifically asking for Jewish actors who identify as Jewish. I did an audition for a small film part, and they asked as part of your slate for you to share something about your Jewish heritage. And I showed a picture of my great uncles who were in the Yiddish theater and talked about that. But suddenly I'm Jewish. I can't tell you how many times I've auditioned for Fiddler on the Roof as a Jew who has not a typical Jewish face and been told I'm not Jewish enough. So where does all of that come into play? Because, Gabriel, from where I'm sitting post the revolution, you're a beautiful white girl. You're young.
You.
Ingenue white girl,
Yeah.
And Kramer, you remind me of all the guys I went to graduate school with who want to do classical theater, who are athletic and who are robust and who love language. And the world of classical theater, I think you might agree, has for the longest really time in any genre in the theater particularly been colorblind in the best way. Because those worlds are so vast, I think if Shakespeare could have conceived of Star Wars, he would have.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on Shakespeare anyway. But what I'm saying is, it's like these are worlds, so. And I know that you love that kind of time travel, that kind of imaginative fantasy kind of thing. Do you agree with me, or am I being subtly racist about this?
No,
I just feel like I've always been able to do great classical work with people from lots of different ethnic and racial backgrounds.
Yeah, I've had sort of two thoughts on this, because the one is, especially with Shakespeare and the actual fantasy, if there was, for some reason, like a D&D movie that I was auditioning for or something, there are things like that where the culture is within the world that already has been made up and exists, that we accept as being real, even though it isn't. They have the diversity built in where I feel like, okay, I'd feel comfortable doing that. And then there were other things, like if we were to talk about like Lord of the Rings, because I love Lord of the Rings, I'm not sure that I fit in that. And I certainly wouldn't want to be cast just for a diversity quota if I didn't fit in it, just, to make me feel better about myself. So I'm kind of in a weird position where, like, on the one hand, I want to work, and on the other hand, I don't want to just be handed stuff. Because I'm not white,
Do you feel like you should? Yeah, but you're what they used to call ethnically ambiguous.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called now, but it's currency. I would think it would be, and I'm not trying to be craven about this, Kramer.
No.
I just wonder if there is a little bit of get out there while the sun shines, while there are opportunities maybe to be seen. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm certain people have cast me for that. I've played more Hispanic characters than I've played people from my actual heritage, which is kind of funny because I'm not Hispanic. So it works in my favor, certainly. But I think because of where we were in DC, it was less about taking advantage of, like, I'm a commodity at this point, and more about, once I'm in there, the people that I'm with are going to expect me to act a certain way. And it doesn't really matter if I get the role. If the people that I'm working with are going to stab me in the back the second I say something that's out of line. So, like, could I audition and use my ethnic ambiguity to my advantage? Sure. Do I want to be in that show, though?
Mm-hmm. Right. So, yeah, I mean, look, we're used to going without. This is one of the things I say quite a bit. Actors in theater, particularly, we're used to not working. And, I've had two experiences in the past 3 years of theater workplaces. One that was a social justice pile-on nightmare last summer. And this summer, complete opposite.
Yeah.
Complete opposite. And I went in honest with my director and told him who I am, and I don't do pronouns, and I respect everybody else's whatever they want to do. And I don't bring my politics into the workplace, which I never did. And I'm here to lift up these young people because that's been my life, part of my life. My parents were theater educators. My mother ran a children's theater company. I worked with children who grew up to be adult artists, actors. Mm-hmm. I know what that responsibility is. But we have to start being authentic because the children smell it. Mm-hmm. The children, the ones who aren't heavily medicated yet. And this was a great group of 20 children from aging from maybe 10 to 13, 14, like that. Very delicate age, all of them terrific. They smell falsity. Mm-hmm. They smell hypocrisy. They're too smart. And things go by them really fast. Their brains fire at a different frequency. which is a problem as well, because they can't concentrate, they can't focus, they're hyper aware of how they're coming across and other people are looking at them. That anxiety, I feel for them, because what they long for, and I'm sure you agree with me because we're all artists, is that feeling of liftoff, that feeling of, I'm not watching myself anymore. I'm not editing the things that are flowing out of me. Mm-hmm. And it takes over. And when everybody's doing that simultaneously, I mean, that's what gets me through the night. Always has. I'm a whore for it. So I understand the reticence to step into a workplace to have your heart broken, which is really what it amounts to. So let's get into the nitty gritty. We got 15 minutes, and this is the part, of the podcast where I feel like I'm in a basement somewhere, printing leaflets, talking conspiratoriously with like-minded heterodox individuals. That's the closest to hetero I've ever been, honey, is heterodox. But so talk to me about. You don't have to relate your war stories, because I wrote a piece recently about Richard Bilkstow. Mm.
His story.
I have trouble talking about him.
So sad. I've listened to honestly his podcast.
He was persecuted to his death.
It is just horrible, and I feel like I know people like him from our history living in DC and people in our industry. And now, mind you, he was just an educator. He wasn't a theater person, but he was eaten alive by his own. He was progressive. He was somebody who identified as a liberal and was somebody who cared about children very, very deeply. And
came out of retirement.
Exactly.
Had already retired from being a public school principal in a very marginalized community.
The fact that the response from all of the DEI initiative and pushers and people around in his life and people who worked with him, that their response has been either dead silent or doubling down on, well, you know what, he deserved it. He should have done this, or like, he did the right thing. He did us all a favor. He was never going to change. All these horrible, horrible things to say about somebody who just took their own life. It is atrocious. It is
atrocious. And, where I'm at with it, Gabriel, and, we both had some interaction with FAIR, and FAIR has done some really great exposing of some of this stuff. The Free Press on this particular subject of Richard Bilkstow, I encourage people to both read it and listen to the embedded audio from these DEI struggle sessions, and the cackling of this vicious individual making an example of this dedicated man and his colleagues completely bending over. And it needs to be known that this is not just an isolated thing. And this is the thing that I feel very committed to exposing, because I've been on the receiving end of this. All you have to do is read the damn books. If you can stomach the soul-crushingly dull prose of Robin DiAngelo, read that piece of crap, divisive, psychobabble, race fetishistic screed upon which a billion-dollar industry has mounted itself. Mm-hmm. I'm tired. And I'm tired of looking at people like you. I mean, you're going to be fine. You have each other. You have love. Mm-hmm. You're building your own thing. And you're strong. And you've got a core. But a lot of people do not. They do not. And I agree with you. This is the time to get married and build a family and create a future. You have to, because you need to build that fortitude.
Exactly. We're going to build that.
So,
just
right?
clip that bitch. You said we're going to take ourselves out. Just like clip that. That's the end. It's over. It's taking ourselves right
out. So in the last 10 minutes, what is the answer? Because I can't abandon the profession yet. I'm writing. I'm doing my own thing. I'm saying my own thing. So far, I haven't been canceled yet because I don't have enough of a reach. I think I have 185 subscribers on Substack. I mean, it's not like I'm ruffling any feathers anywhere yet. But even if I were to be, I'll tell you something, kids. This industry is shady, and it's always been shady. And all of the decisions that we'll never know are made behind closed doors amongst a very small handful of people. We don't have the information. We don't get the breakdowns. We don't know what the jobs are. We don't know who was offered what. I can't tell you the number of times that I've ate my heart out getting ready for a Broadway audition only to find out there never was a job.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't get invited back at a theater, having done great work for them, for example, and you had a little with somebody, little friction, you can pretty well bet that that's why you didn't get invited back the next time. You'll never know it. No one will ever say it. And this is the part of this ideology thing that I've been able to puncture from get-go, that I've seen through from the minute one. It's so petty and cowardly and passive-aggressive.
Yep.
And it's all happening with, and I'm going to go home to my keyboard. And
I don't know if you knew.
So how do you overcome that?
During the very beginning of the lockdowns, there was a lot of drama on Facebook in the DC area over the Facebook theater salon. And there was a lot of people calling people out. There was a lot of drama. And I wasn't super involved in Facebook. I was part of the page because I think everyone in the theater industry in DC is part of it in some capacity. And I could see that there were things kind of flying left and right. And I was just like, I'm not even going to look into everything. But that mentality of the eating each other, and just in a time where we could all be unifying, we could all be, talking about how COVID is wrecking everyone's future here. It became a moment for individuals in our industry to attack each other and to cancel and to end people. And I don't want any part of that. I don't want any part of that. Anything.
I think, because I believe.
Yeah. Well, go.
I believe your question about was what is the solution? Like, how do we navigate this? Is that correct?
I don't think there's a solution. I think it's going to take the passage of time and the breaking of the fever. I think any student of history, even cursory history of the past 100 years, can identify when something reaches its fever pitch and the rebound starts to happen. The problem I have, and maybe you can incorporate this in your response, is the people who are so zealous about it now, who are so raging and so quick to condemn people and all of that stuff. When the pendulum swings back and they realize just how far they went, they're not going to have the humility to say I was wrong. It's like the blacklist. I really liken this to the McCarthy era and the Hollywood 10 and the blacklist, because it's cowardly behavior. And on the other side of it, when it inevitably will end, who are you going to be? Did you name names? Did you play the game? Did you throw your friends and people under the bus?
We've experienced a bit of that. And I feel like, at least from my position, I've experienced it because of association with Kramer. I'm like not even joking. Like, yeah, of you must think
what
me, whatever. I'm not going to say it, but like you must be all these things because you would stand by your man, or like without asking me.
Well, Kramer, have you been very outspoken, Kramer? I mean, in what kind of a forum are you voicing?
Well, what we're referring to right now, I believe, is right before I left DC, right when COVID was happening. I went, okay, I'm done. And George Floyd had just died, and there were, of course, protests and riots, depending on where you were looking, at the same time. And I just posted a thing on Facebook, and I said, hey, listen, guys, I understand that everyone's like emotions are really high. I understand why there are marches happening. I understand what it is that you're doing this for, but at what point do we throw out the Constitution because some of the people who wrote it owned slaves too? Like where do we draw the line? And everyone from here to fucking Timbuktu, so I don't know if I can curse, everyone from here to Timbuktu came out and called me racist. I mean, I came from a class where I was the only like POC or whatever. I hate that term, but so it was a bunch of kids that I went to college with calling me racist, and it was just really funny. And then they came to her and they were like, "Are you going to break up with him?" So this is what I'll say.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. So do you feel, were you, I mean, honestly, hindsight is 2020, but even I can feel that timing of that particular message in that moment, either was impulsive or you didn't give a fuck. It was because you had to have felt that was going to get that kind of response. No?
Oh yeah. I wasn't doing it.
Maybe not. I don't know.
I wasn't doing it to try to convince anybody. I wasn't doing it especially to try to convince the people that I knew were going to explode at it. The biggest hope there would be that other people that weren't really feeling one way or another would see the response in the comments to what is ultimately a very benign statement and maybe just think a little bit about what he said is reasonable.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I pick my battles better now.
Almost to expose the overreaction or the height to show, like, how sensitive everybody was feeling at that time. But it was, I mean, your timing of it made me so furious.
But you stepped in it.
Yeah, but I did it on purpose. I knew what I was doing. I mean,
I knew you stepped in it. You stepped in. Well, this is the question for which I really didn't require an answer, because if you do something like that and you're an intelligent gentleman such as you are, with a particular a low tolerance for bullshit, which I completely recognize, because honestly, life's too short. Mm-hmm. Life is too short. It's getting shorter all the time. And when I look at somebody and I'm like, they're like children, and I look at them and going, really? They don't like that. They don't like that. They want to hide behind their avatar. And I will say this, timing can be very, very important.
Yeah, for sure.
It can be critical. And I think it's hard. It took me a year almost to speak out. And I had John McWhorter and Glenn Lowry inviting me to come and talk on their podcast. And I'm like, am I going to do this? Dude, am I going to do this? And what is it going to accomplish?
That interview was so good. When I first heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, listen to this. Listen. And I was like, there's another one. Yeah.
Well, John McWhorter, I mean, he got so angry. There's a clip of him out there responding to the way that I had been treated in the workplace in one of these disruption incidents. And when he gets razor angry, razor sharp, I mean, God bless him. There's no stopping him. He's a rhetorical genius for sure. And the two of them are so they're so persistent. They're calmly walking their path, asking the questions, challenging orthodoxy, in disagreeing with each other. This is where it's at.
Yeah.
I don't mind pissing people off if I can wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and go, I didn't have an ignoble motive, because I have had in the past. I tell people all the time, I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I am a 5'6" little terrier with a terrible Napoleon complex, and have always been very pugnacious and risen to the bait especially when somebody's full of it. It doesn't earn you friends. But in this case, things that are a matter of opinion, we have been told by the Grand High Poobah of sensitivity, there's a joke for you, what opinions we're allowed to have and what we're allowed to say and what is completely beyond the pale. And frankly, I really don't care if you think I'm problematic. There are plenty of big shots in the show business that think Jamie Beeman is problematic. But always because of integrity. Even if you're going to make a mistake, it's your mistake, correct?
Yep.
It's not a mistake that you have went along with. Yeah. You can't be complacent. I wrote an essay. Yeah, go.
Great pieces on that. You're covering for that one movie that I still haven't seen yet from the 40s. The one, or maybe it's the 30s.
The Mortal Storm.
Yes, The Mortal Storm. Thank you. The piece that you wrote around that one, that I don't want to be on the other end. I'm not going to be, because during COVID, we talked about this all the time. That was all of the people who turned in Jewish people or turned a blind eye to the crimes that were happening against all different minorities and Jewish people and gay people and Catholics and all these people throughout Europe, and people who turned a blind eye. Are we going to be those people right now? Hell no. Hell no. I feel like there's no way. There's no way.
I think this ultimately says
and this is and what's interesting is the thing. No, go ahead.
I think this ultimately says a lot about where the industry is at the moment anyway, because an artist's job, whether it's in the theater or whether it's, singing or painting or something, your job is to push the bounds of society a little bit and to test where that line is and hold a mirror up to the other person just a little bit. It's a very simple logic. If you want to know who's in power, then look at who you're not allowed to criticize. So if we're not calling people on the bullshit, it almost does it matter? Like, are we doing art if we're just capitulating to stuff and doing the trendy thing, or are we just creating entertainment for the sake of it? I guess.
Well, clearly, people are not being quiet in rejecting content. I wrote about the Queen Cleopatra debacle. It just sucked. I mean, if something just sucks, it sucks. And people are not going, oh, yes, diversity, as much anymore. And people are losing money. They're massive amounts of money. Bad content. I mean, and here's the thing. A strike is a manufactured crisis. Like COVID happened, there was a lockdown, there's going to be all kinds of capitulations and exposés and all kinds of things about how that came to be and conspiracy theories, and I'm really not interested in it. But that shut the industry down completely. This strike is a intentional stoppage of an industry. So what is going to be extracted from that industry in order to resume normal activity? And, we hear about the AI and we hear about the streaming services and we hear from Rachel Zegler, who just needs that Zoomer idiot calling Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs the first ever animated feature film that was made with the hands of thousands of artists over a 3-year period against impossible odds, a cartoon. Really, dear? I think we're regretting that Steven Spielberg found you in your high school production of West Side Story, dear. I don't like ingratitude, okay? Nobody owes you anything in this business, but when you've been given an opportunity, whether you earned it, I'm sure she did. You've got that platform. You can't go on TikTok crying and going, I'm being picked on and I don't know. Either talk and do what Jane Fonda did in the 70s about much more important matters and got herself in trouble with Hollywood. Either take a stand and stand behind it or get the fuck off the stage. I don't want to hear, people are... It's like that Meghan Markle thing. It's like, I don't cry for you, Argentina. I do not. Get a grip. Tone deaf. If Rachel Zegler wants to go on the picket line for a photo op for her Insta, okay, stand there and shut up and hold a sign. Or put the camera in front of that writer who's trying to support his family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Shut the fuck up. Sorry. Sorry. I hate that.
Yeah. I think ultimately what we're dealing with in a lot of cases is at the top level of the issues that we're facing with this woke culture is people that are very dysregulated and poorly adjusted. And then people whose hearts are in the right place who are enabling those people because they just don't see through the bullshit and they want to do what they feel like is the right thing. You said a little while ago that it is cowardly, and I agree that it is. I think the way the people that are sort of talking about this and being done with our current iteration of society, the way that we make it through it is we essentially just have to be perfect. You got to read Sun Tzu. You got to listen to Yuri Bezmenov. You got to know what's happening, pick your battles, and be very wise and very aware and acute of what is happening around you and when. And don't just like blow up at the first woke person that comes across you, because it's not gonna end well for you. You got to know when you're going to challenge and when you're just going to back up on something. And ultimately, it's not sustainable, and it's going to end at some point. And those people that were cowards, no, they're not going to be held accountable at all. They're not going to apologize. They're just going to sort of look slightly confused around and be like, "Oh, I didn't know, I didn't do that." And so what we have to
and when the first canceled writer or canceled star makes their comeback and is nominated and wins an Oscar, they'll stand up with everybody else. Yes.
Yeah. What we have to be really comfortable with is
I didn't name names.
Is what we have to be really comfortable with is the knowledge that winning this culture war does not entail any sort of justice or repercussions. Winning just means our culture is better at the end of it. It does not mean that there's never going to be a mass awakening. People are not going to apologize. They're not going to realize what they did was wrong. It will happen again in the future. We just have to fix it now first, and we can get the rest of it later, and not try to convince people that are just too far gone and waste our time and potentially put ourselves in social or actual real danger in the meantime. We've got to create, those of us that are free thinking, we've got to do the stuff ourselves, and then just pray that it all works out in the end for us.
This is a great way to wrap up this conversation, especially in the context of, okay, so I'm going to say this because I have a weird soft spot for marriage. Weddings. I used to be a makeup artist. Okay, 15 years I worked in retail, high-end retail, selling cosmetics in New York was my day job, and I did almost 200 weddings in that time. And I've seen every kind of broadzilla, and I've seen every kind of wedding disaster, and many a triumph as well. I believe in commitment. And I was not popular at dinner parties when marriage equality was being bantered around before it was passed, and it was not the fashionable thing to push back on it. And what I was saying at the time was, having been in a 16-year relationship with every protection we could have, wills and living wills and advanced directives and anything we could have, domestic partnership. If we had gotten up in front of my family and all my loved ones and whatever deity is listening and said, "You forever," we'd still be together. I don't believe in divorce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe in singlehood. I believe in living in sin. But if you're going to get married, this is one of the things that I applaud you guys, because it is an optimistic thing to do. You have to be open-minded, and you have to remember that people change. This is one thing. People want the wedding. They don't want the marriage. You want the marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's about. It's about building something, building a space in the world that you, through your love and collaboration and commitment and sacrifice, build with your own hands together. That is as much a creative project as any is. Mm-hmm. And what you're talking about, I'm very moved by it, Kramer, because I do believe exactly what you say, that these things are temporary plagues upon humanity. And, you know, I could go on in another conversation about the temperance movement that arose out of the Great War, the first part of the 20th century, and the flu epidemic that happened at the same time, that was killing the women and children at home who were doing all the work because the men were off getting killed in France. It is cyclical. Human nature is what it is. But the consistency, I think, and for one last little thing, I'm sure you've heard people say to you, well, I don't want to be on the wrong side of history.
Yeah.
All of this stuff of this compliance with new language and this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't want to be on the wrong side of history. But can't you see it coming? I don't know if you guys have ever watched the movie Trumbo, about Dalton Trumbo, who was the blacklisted Oscar-winning screenwriter, played by Bryan Cranston in this movie. Another date night for the two of you. But Dalton Trumbo wrote Roman Holiday with Audrey Hepburn and Gregory Peck and won the Oscar for it under a false name because he was working from the cornfield. Basically, he'd been blacklisted. And on the other side of it, people come around. Mm-hmm. And he was friends with Edward G. Robinson, who was a great actor. And he named names. He went belly up for House Un-American Activities. And there's a scene in it where the two of them meet socially after Dalton Trumbo has been released from this ignominy. And the cowardly excuses and playing the victim of Edward G. Robinson in this scene, whether it's true or not, I'm sure it is. The sniveling. I didn't have a choice, or we didn't know. You talked about the Holocaust earlier. We didn't know. You didn't know when you saw people lined up being marched to the boxcars down the middle of the street? I think not. Mm-hmm. And I feel your strength as you get married. Oh my God, getting married. I can't believe you're even forming coherent sentences. There's so much pressure. Listen, what does the future look like? Just in the last 3 minutes, what does it look like when we pass through this time, wiser, hopefully, not completely destroyed? What does that look like, do you think?
I think it's going to be a lot less climactic than a lot of us think that it's going to be. All of a sudden, it's just going to not be as bad. Yeah. And people aren't really going to know why. There will be something else eventually in the future that comes along that people get worked up about again. But one day, it's just simply going to cease. Because that's how these social contagions work. Mm-hmm. They just get tired. People get tired of doing it. And then it just goes away. Kind of like, I know your cast just got COVID, but a little bit like COVID in terms of how it was processed like online. It just doesn't exist anymore. It's just gone from people talking about it that much.
Right.
And that's how all of this is going to go, essentially. And the rest of us have to have the good grace and the compassion to look at the people that would have stabbed us in the back and gotten us fired and just go, maybe don't do that again, but not hold it against them, not try to seek revenge on them, because that being a sore winner in this instance is going to keep it going even further. We have to have the capacity to forgive the people that got caught up in this.
But I also...
Well, this is huge. I mean, this is Shakespeare for you. While it's on the tip of my tongue, the quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. Forgiveness. Why is there none? No compassion, no room to make mistakes. What were you going to say, Gabriel?
Well, wokeness by its nature sort of doesn't have any room for forgiveness. But I do think that I've noticed more of the younger people that I've taught and teached, taught and that I've worked with.
I cursed you.
That they are all, I don't know, like you said, they sniff out the BS and they're like, get that out of here. They're quick to tease and to make fun of all of the stupid stuff that's happening. And that gives me hope because I'm like, okay, all right, you know what? Like, if they're making fun of it and like, they're like, oh, this is so uncool to or whatever. Like, we're going to be fine. We're all going to be fine. And, touching base with kids and like seeing like, hey, what are you doing at school? Like, what do you talk about with your friends? Oh, it's none of this stuff. Okay. Thank goodness.
I can't recommend being around youngsters more. It was a tonic for me to have a gang of pickpockets out in a barn in Connecticut for a couple months. They're terrific. Children just want to belong. They just want to belong. They don't want to be told why they don't.
They want to see, and what I love about, especially in theater settings, working with kids, is that they just soak in so much information about everyone around them. They really do look up to these older actors, and they pick somebody to sort of exemplify or like, I had somebody come up to me and they were like, I could tell you were acting really well because you had stuff going on behind your eyes and I could see what you were thinking. And I was like, okay, you want to try doing that too? They're like, yeah, I'm going to do that in the next show that I'm in. I'm like, that's great, honey. Like, go for it,
Meanwhile, I'm just like, yeah, I was hungry. So
Sure. But.
Yeah. Well, they don't need to know, They don't need to know. My mother always used to say that when she was coaching actors. They don't need to know your preparation. So I'm going to wrap it up with you. I could talk to you forever. Yes, go.
Just that I think that's the future then, to look forward and help cultivate these younger kids. I think that's it. So, yeah.
Okay, well, I consider myself a younger kid, so you can inspire me. I need to get my court sword out, and Kramer and I need to have a duel. I'm very rusty, but I've got my, I've got my guards, I've got my things. We're sword fighters. And sometime we'll talk about DC. I went to grad school in DC. I have many lovely, wonderful, brilliant friends there. But it is a fraught place to live. It's a difficult place to be.
Yes.
New York's difficult too, honey. I mean, I hate telling stories of way back when, but I'll tell you, 30 years I've been now in this neighborhood, and I'm not seeing a lot of change for the better. Particularly architecturally, but that's just aesthetics. You guys, so where can we find you online? I will include all of this stuff in the blurb, but tell us where to go to find you, and then I'll wish you an incredible wedding. Just
thank you.
Incredible love-in of celebration and a new life together. So tell us where we can find you both.
After you.
Best place to find me is at my website, which is www.GabrieLAshtonBrown.com. My voiceover stuff is there. My acting and my directing stuff is there as well. And I also have a seasonal newsletter that I'm working on that I released just as a little update. That, and then Instagram seems to be working pretty well, which is Gabvo, G.A.B.V.O, on Instagram. What about you?
You can find me on YouTube at Living Anachronism. I also have a website, livinganachronism.com, and I'm on Instagram at Living Anachronism Official, because someone else already stole my name.
I bet they don't look as good in tights as you do.
I haven't seen
I admire you both. I wish you an incredible life together. So many things lay ahead of you. I'm here to fire you up if you need firing up. I'm here to listen if you need listening. But I truly, I look at you guys and I think, okay, we'll be okay. I think we'll be okay. Oh. And for everybody else, wish me luck. I'm taking another COVID test. I have been testing positive for 8 days. I feel fine. I just want it to be over. And I just sent out the press on my cabaret comeback lived experience, which is every bit as saucy as you think it's going to be. And that'll be at the Triad Theater on 72nd Street here in New York City, October 19th to 26th. Yes, shameless plug, because people gave me money to do this, so now I've got to make it work. Gabriel and Kramer, happy trails and many, many happy years together. And stay tuned, stay strong, and we'll see you next time at the cornfield. Bye-bye.